I think that helping the player to discover the rules for themselves is really valuable. I mean, it's a compromise, right? Because there's some things you just have to tell the player, right? Like you have to say press M to look at your map. They're not just gonna find that in a natural, organic way. But in Gone Home, for instance, we had a number of mechanics that we wanted the player to internalize before they were just set loose in the house. So on the front porch of the house, it's like there's a locked door. We don't tell you how to get through it, but it's like a very small amount of space. You just walk up near something, you can click on it. It tells you what's going to happen when you click on it. And you find Christmas duck, and we just tell you outright, use this other button to examine it, because that's not really discoverable. But we give you access to that rule of like, oh, I can pick up this object and like look at the underside of it. And then you pick up the key and go inside. And by that point, you understand by having a simple challenge that like, oh, okay, there can be locked doors, but I can open other doors and I can pick things up and examine them. And if I find a key, I just have it and I can open a door with that. So, okay, those are things I can do in this game now that I'm in the foyer and there's way more ground to cover. And so you have been motivated to use the clear affordances of setting the game in the real world, which is like, I know what a front door is. I know that sometimes a front door key is hidden somewhere on the front porch. I know you can open cabinets. Like, you can make assumptions and then test them. Can I do that in this game? Because that's the thing. In a lot of games, you can't turn a lamp on and off, right? And so motivating the player to test an assumption, such as this is a dark room and there's a lamp right on the edge of the lit area. I should see whether I can turn that on. And then saying, oh, yes, that is something that you can do, pulling them towards an understanding of how the interactive space works, as opposed to, read the manual. Like, dump it on their head, I think is really important. And I think that something that's important to remember as a designer is at the beginning of the game, the player is building an understanding of how the rules of the game world work. And they will accept a lot because when they're still sketching out those rules, they're adding, you can open doors and you can turn on lights, and sometimes you hear audio diaries when you examine something, and you have a map, and it's just sort of like, I guess that's how this game world, this particular game works. And they internalize it, and then in our case, we come back much later and address, finally, here's why that was happening the whole time. But I think it's easy to potentially get really hung up as a designer on like, here's how our game works, but if the player doesn't understand exactly why, then they won't accept it. Video games are so weird and have so many like special case sort of like rules on a per game basis that there's a lot of flexibility to have the player just kind of give you the benefit of the doubt, and accept the rules that that govern the game world that you've made. But again, it's this balancing act of how much do you have to say outright and how much can you let them discover, and how much is it okay if they just never understand? Because there is stuff that falls under that heading too, I think.